Bill Scher is a blogger at Campaign for America's Future and, of course, at liberaloasis.com, old friend of the show, and he's here to talk a little bit about Rick Perry. Now, Bill, we did a very unscientific, informal poll on davidpakman.com asking whether Rick Perry's entrance to the 2012 GOP race makes a difference at all. 62% say yes, he's a strong candidate, maybe even an instant frontrunner. 23% say he's not going to be the nominee anyway. I tend to think this guy, number one, has a chance. What do you think?
Oh, he definitely has a chance. Think about it this way. I might have said on a past show of yours that with a fractured race, multiple candidates in contention, you only need about 35% to win the initial Republican contest, and if you can string a few of those together, then you can take off. And so the question then becomes which candidate can consolidate a healthy faction or factions of the Republican primary electorate. And so long as the conservative vote was fractured between Bachmann and Gingrich and Santorum and Kaine, Romney was sitting fairly well in upper 20s, low 30s. Now Perry comes in, at least in national polling. He has pretty quick. I mean, Bachmann seemed to have a chance before of consolidating that conservative vote, and she was breaking out of the pack a little bit and kind of nipping at Romney's heels in certain polls. But now Perry comes in. He puts almost all the other conservatives in single digits except for Bachmann, but Bachmann's now in the low 10s. He takes a chunk out of Romney, it seems, too. Some of the pragmatists that would rather have a more conservative candidate if a electable one was available. And now Perry's in the upper 20s, and Romney's I think around 20, again, nationally. So you have the possibility now that Romney can be a conservative standard bearer and pick up some of the more pragmatic Republican vote and win the nomination. Now, it's an open question whether that sustains if Perry does things that are self-inflicted wounds. And we also don't know if another candidate's going to get in the race that could mix it up again. But
so let's explore that, because when I look at Rick Perry, I feel like there's almost an abundance of riches if we want to look at what is there for progressives and Democrats to criticize. And it seems to be split along a couple of different lines. One line is that he's not really a conservative line, right? I mean, he raised taxes and fees in Texas. Per capita spending in Texas is higher than in California. Spending is almost double where it was when he took over as governor. And then there's this kind of other line, which is the he's kind of nuts line, right? I mean, he's calling climate change scientists a cult while holding a Pray for Rain event. Go figure that one out. There's, he's saying evolution is just a theory. I feel like progressives can't criticize all of these things all the time. What will be most effective to expose him, you think?
I mean, that's an excellent point, and it's a problem that liberals often have. They want to get all the facts out. They want to get everything out, and if you do that, it can become a big jumble that is hard for the average voter to sift through because the average voter doesn't pour through every last article the way that political junkies do. So you got to pick your target. What's going to be the most resonant? What's going to be the thing that takes him down? And there's two thoughts I have here. One is I think in a general election, what's in his book, Fed Up, calling Social Security unconstitutional, Medicare unconstitutional, musing about repealing the 16th and 17th Amendment, which allows for any income tax at all, and actual democratic election of U.S. senators. Those sorts of things, I think, are pretty damning. I mean, they even took out Joe Miller in Alaska. That was too crazy for Alaska, and he lost the race even though he had the Republican nomination. So I see that as a general election thing. Now, as far as what might upset him in a Republican primary, now there are some conservatives, I think they're a minority right now, bringing up the he's not conservative enough line. He forced girls to have an HPV vaccine.
Which he did admit was a mistake, right? That one he did back up. Now he is, conveniently.
He defended for a very, very long time, very explicitly and defiantly. Only now has he backed off of it.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of public spending. Some people have said that's been public spending for cronies and not even for good jobs. He's pushed a big highway project that some conservatives call the NAFTA superhighway that's going to, destroy American sovereignty. So there's those sorts of criticisms that are out there. But the things that have held back Bachman and Palin, even though she's not a formal candidate right now, is that they've done so many outlandish things that the media can't help themselves but to focus on it. And there's a good chunk of conservatives out there that say, I like them, but the media is not going to give them a fair shake. And, that's unfair, but man, do I want to win this one. I'm not going to take a risk on that. There seems to be a ceiling on their support, even though they have high favorable ratings. In a poll about who you're going to vote for president, they tend to stay around 15%. So if Perry gets caught up in that kind of Cuisinart, where every little thing he's saying is getting jumped on by the press because he keeps being so outlandish, that might give more Republicans pause. And that's a possibility with him because he seems to have somewhat of a difficulty controlling himself when in the hot seat.
Okay, so to finalize then, let's assume Perry is the Republican nominee, goes to the general election. If you have to pick one thing that should be the point that progressives point out about Perry in a general election context, what do you think it is?
I think Social Security and Medicare being unconstitutional. I mean, there's definitely folks on the left that are very concerned about what Obama's going to do in Social Security and Medicare. We're going to hear more about that after Labor Day, perhaps. And that might be politically complicated for Obama. But as complicated as that might be, nothing is going to be worse than saying they're unconstitutional. People like Social Security, they like Medicare, and they don't like crackpot legal theories. So I think that's a very hard thing to defend in a general election.
All right, Bill Scher, Campaign for America's Future and liberaloasis.com. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll see who it ends up being. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, talk to you later.